After my younger brother's death, my sister-in-law and my husband conspired to kill me. I tore up the report of my younger brother's infectious disease and quietly watched their performance. 01 As early as several months ago, I noticed that something was off about my sister-in-law towards my husband Blake. From time to time, she would look at Blake with her big, watery eyes right in front of my brother. When Blake was watching TV in the living room, she would deliberately bend over in front of him to pick up this or that. From Blake's perspective, the view inside her clothes was almost completely exposed. At first, Blake tried to avoid her on purpose. For the sake of my relationship with my brother, I had been putting up with it all along. But my brother died in a car accident just yesterday, and today she couldn't wait to move into my house. Sister, Mom and Dad are worried about me staying at home alone. They insisted that I move in. Will it bother you and brother-in-law? I looked at the petite, cute, and seemingly innocent sister-in-law Jayla and was about to refuse when ding-ling-ling. My cell phone rang. It was my mom calling. Maya, has Jayla arrived? Yes, she has. Maya, your brother is gone. Our whole family is in deep grief, especially Jayla. I glanced at the sister-in-law in front of me, whose face was rosy and whose eyes had a certain gleam, and didn't respond. My mom sobbed a few times and then continued, but fortunately, Jayla is pregnant. Mom hopes you can take good care of her. 02 I was so shocked by this news that I couldn't say a word. Actually, I had originally planned to ask my sister-in-law to come over and take her to the hospital for a physical examination. Because just yesterday, my brother had a serious traffic accident. Before my brother entered the operating room, he had a preoperative examination and the result was actually HIV positive. That is, AIDS as it's commonly known. Since I was the first one to arrive at the hospital at that time, this report had been in my bag. But now that Jayla was pregnant, how was I supposed to bring this up? After thinking it over, I decided to take her to the hospital tomorrow for a comprehensive examination. I asked a favor from a friend and got an appointment with the most authoritative obstetrician and gynecologist in the city. Just as I put down the phone and walked out of the room, I saw my sister-in-law's coat casually thrown on the sofa. And she was wearing a dress with a wide neckline, bending over to look for fruits on the coffee table in front of Blake. She picked up a bright red cherry tomato and said, "Brother-in-law, are these cherry tomatoes sweet?" Blake's eyes were fixed on the neckline of my sister-in-law's dress with a half-smile on his face. Of course they're sweet. 03 Seeing me come out, Blake immediately shifted his gaze back to the TV. And my sister-in-law walked over with a smile, hugging my arm. "Sister, brother-in-law said these cherry tomatoes are sweet. I want to eat some. Go and wash a few for me." Seeing that I pulled my arm away with a displeased look on my face, my sister-in-law looked at me with a wronged expression. "Sister, the baby in my belly is the posthumous child of your Maya family. Mom just told you to take good care of me." Thinking of the innocent child in her belly and not knowing what fate awaited it, I finally didn't say anything and went to wash the cherry tomatoes for her. But seeing her look of smugness, she probably thought she had me pinned down with the posthumous child. Dealing with stupid people is really tiring, and back then, when my brother wanted to marry Jayla, everyone in the family disagreed, including me. 04 My parents thought that they were not a good match in terms of family background. Our family runs a profitable preserved plum factory with an annual income of around 10 million yuan. After graduating from university, my brother started working from the bottom in the factory. It was at this time that he met Jayla on the assembly line in the factory. Jayla graduated from a technical secondary school and has 3 younger brothers in her family. The only thing she could boast about was her delicate beauty. I didn't reject her just because of her education level or family background. It was an incident that happened in the factory that made me have a grudge against her from then on. 05 When I first entered the factory after graduating, there was an experienced master who was mentoring me. He had a hero fountain pen, which was given to him by his deceased father. Usually, he would clip it in his shirt pocket and only take it out to use when he needed to sign something. But one day, for some reason, Jayla insisted on borrowing that pen from the master to sign something. although the master was reluctant to part with it, since it was just for signing and wouldn't get damaged. He lent it to her. Who would have thought that after Jayla signed, she threw the pen at the master from 3 meters away? Catch it! Jayla had a bright smile on her face. The master didn't have time to react, and the pen hit the ground with its snap and broke into 2 pieces. Seeing that the pen couldn't be repaired, Jayla immediately acted very sincere and offered to pay for it. Seeing this, the master could only wave his hand helplessly and said, "It's okay, it's okay. Out with the old, in with the new." But I clearly saw that the master took out a handkerchief with tears in his eyes and wrapped the pen up. Later, when Jayla was dating my brother, she even brought up this incident. Treating a broken fountain pen like a treasure. How much can a broken hero pen be worth? So hypocritical. From then on, I had no good impression of Jayla.06, although the whole family strongly opposed it. My brother was so obsessed that he insisted on marrying her. After my parents threatened to cut off my brother's financial support, my brother had a long talk with them all night. After that night, surprisingly, my parents relented and agreed to let Jayla marry into the family. Even when it was later revealed that Jayla had been married once before in her hometown and had even had an abortion, it didn't shake my love-struck brother's determination to marry her. The female workers on the assembly line in the factory were so envious of Jayla. She was marrying a university graduate for her second marriage, and his family was wealthy. The wedding dowry was 1.88 million yuan, and her name was added to a house in the city center. Even so, Jayla wasn't satisfied and demanded that a Mercedes-Benz be bought for her before the wedding. I thought that such greediness would surely arouse my parents' dislike, but unexpectedly, my usually sensible parents agreed to it for the first time. However, after my brother got married, I never saw my brother and sister-in-law driving that Mercedes-Benz again. 07 Sister, have you washed the cherry tomatoes? A sweet voice brought me back to my thoughts. I carried the cherry tomatoes out. Jayla, I'll take you to the hospital for an examination tomorrow. A look of uneasiness flashed across Jayla's face. What's wrong? Sister, why do we need to go to the hospital? It's nothing, just a preliminary examination. Jayla's voice with a tinge of crying soon followed. Sister, you don't suspect me, do you? I looked at her with a puzzled expression. Why would you think that? It's just that a prenatal examination is also necessary in the early stage of pregnancy. 08 The next day, I quickly tidied myself up and went to wake Jayla up. But there was no one in the guest room already. I called her. Sister, you were sleeping so soundly that I didn't wake you. I was going to come by myself, but brother-in-law was worried about me and insisted on coming with me. In the noisy background noise, I could vaguely hear Blake paying the bill. Hanging up the phone, I let out a cold laugh. These two are getting more and more interesting. So, I found a recording pen and placed it in a hidden corner of the guest room. 09 They didn't come back until the evening. As soon as she got home, Jayla couldn't wait to throw a ultrasound sheet at me. Sister, the obstetrician said the baby might be 3 weeks old already. I pretended to be happy. That's good, that's good. Sister, this is the root of your old Maya family. I'll send the ultrasound to Mom and Dad to have a look. With that, Jayla went back to the guest room. Blake came over to hug me but was dodged by me. Maya, are you angry? This morning, just as I was about to go out, Jayla said her stomach hurt. I didn't think much of it and took her to the hospital. After all, it's also the posthumous child of your brother. I put on a very grateful look. Blake, thank you so much. A few days later, while Jayla and Blake were out, I went to Jayla's room to get the recording pen. Originally, I thought at most I would hear that I had been cheated on. But the content of the recording pen shocked me to the core. Jayla and Blake had been having an affair for months. She wasn't pregnant at all. She lied about being pregnant just to keep my parents in check. She was afraid that my parents would drive her away and she wouldn't get a share of the Maya family's property. The most important thing was that they had decided to get rid of me. In this way, they could use the posthumous child to seize all of our family's property. Of course, they haven't managed to create the posthumous child yet. When they do, it will be my death sentence. After listening to this recording, I couldn't help but laugh. I had married Blake, a Phoenix man, despite my parents' objections. And my brother was also a hopeless romantic and married Jayla, this little white flower. Now they're having an affair, not only planning to kill me but also to embezzle all of my family's property. They really have some nerve. I slowly tore up the report of my brother's HIV positive result. I then casually picked up a Yongshan honey peach on the table and wiped it all over their underwear. Let's play then. 11 tiny hairs stuck all over their underwear. Then I hung the underwear on the balcony, because both of them were used to getting their clothes directly from the balcony when they took a bath. In the evening, they took a bath one after the other and then sat in the living room watching TV. Before long, they started to fidget, blushing all over and twisting around uncomfortably. I looked at them casually and said, "What's the matter with you two? Do you have lice all over your bodies?" They looked at each other guiltily and then sat on the sofa, suffering from the torment of wanting to scratch but not being able to. Finally, Jayla couldn't bear it first and went to the bathroom to take another bath. As soon as Jayla entered, Blake started reaching into his pants and scratching constantly. I gave him a disgusted look and went back to the bedroom. When Blake came back to the room after taking another bath, I had already turned off the lights and lain down. He carefully got on the bed and tried to hug me from behind. I elbowed him hard a few times backwards and then pushed Blake off the bed. "Blake, don't be ungrateful. Don't forget our agreement." In the dim light, Blake's expression flickered. Finally, he resignedly picked up the pillow on the bed and went to sleep on the tatami where he usually slept. Shh. This is a secret between me and Blake. A secret that even my parents don't know. The next day, I got up very early. To my surprise, both Jayla and Blake were already up. The two of them were having breakfast in the living room, chatting and laughing. Seeing that I was up, Jayla immediately called out sweetly, "Sister, you're up? I want to go back to work in the factory today." Since Jayla married my younger brother, my parents had transferred her from the assembly line to the administrative department. She is now mainly responsible for handling after-sales work for the dealers. And Blake is the sales manager who is specifically in charge of liaising with the dealers. Previously, the two of them often entertained suppliers together, accompanying them to drink and going to entertainment venues was a common occurrence. And my younger brother, as the heir to the factory, would go in and out with them. So I never had any suspicions. Now that I think about it, maybe my younger brother was as stupid as I was. From the beginning to the end, I didn't notice that there had been something fishy between these two people. Now that Jayla is so eager to go back to work in the factory, it must be to create more time to be with Blake and also to consolidate her position in the hearts of my parents. 13 down in the underground parking lot, my car was parked next to Blake's. I was driving a white Audi Q5L, while Blake was driving a black A6L. Jayla naturally opened the passenger door of the A6L and got in. "Sister, I can't ride in an SUV, or I'll get carsick. I'm sitting in the passenger seat of brother-in-law's car. You won't be jealous, will you?" "Actually, it's not for myself. It's your little nephew who wants to sit there." Looking at Jayla bouncing around, I waved my hand casually, indicating that they could go first. "You guys go to the factory first. I happen to have some other things to take care of." It wasn't until I couldn't see the taillights of their car anymore that I slowly drove towards my younger brother and sister-in-law's house. Because my younger brother had always had a bad memory, he had left a spare key with me just in case. It was the first time I had used the spare key to open the door of my younger brother's house after such a long time. 14 However, I searched every corner of my younger brother's house but couldn't find what I was looking for. Just when I was about to give up, I finally found my younger brother's test reports in a hidden corner of his esports room. Looking at the dozens of report sheets in my hand, I frowned tightly. Why did my younger brother have so many HIV tests? I started looking at the reports one by one. The dates were neatly arranged from the farthest to the nearest. The farthest one was already 2 years ago. He had gone for a test almost every month, but the reports had always been negative until one report a month ago showed positive. A month ago? Wait, A little more than a month ago, my younger brother went abroad to play for a few days with his good friends. 15 I grabbed my younger brother's report sheets and rushed out of the house. Now I just wanted to rush into my parents' office to get to the bottom of this. I drove the car, speeding on the road. Finally, I arrived at the factory entrance, but was stopped by a strange young security guard. Because the car had just been bought and the license plate hadn't been entered into the factory's access control system, the barrier didn't go up. Previously, the security guard would always open the door for me remotely. I had never seen the security guard before today. He looked me and my car up and down, and then asked with a fake smile, "Do you have a pass?" I rolled down the window, not wanting to waste any words with him. "Don't you even know who I am?" Seeing that I rolled down the window, his shifty eyes darted around inside the car and on my face. Oh, so cocky. "Looking down on us security guards, are you? I'm telling you I'm not afraid of you. My sister is the young mistress of this factory." Jayla had even brought her rural younger brother to work as a security guard here. I, the personnel manager, didn't even know about it. Who on earth approved it for him? But I don't have time to worry about this right now. I didn't even know that I needed a pass to enter my own factory. I stared at him sharply with my eyes. "If you keep blabbing, I'll get you fired right away." Only then did Jayla's younger brother realize who I was and reluctantly opened the door. It seemed that he didn't take me seriously at all. This Shu family is really a bunch of idiots. They really think of my family's factory as their own possession. 16 After my parents finished entertaining the dealers, I rushed into their office immediately. I handed them the reports in my hand. "Mom and Dad, did you already know that Max didn't like women? Is that why you agreed to let Jayla marry into the family?" My parents looked at each other, and their faces immediately fell. "Maya, your younger brother is already dead. Isn't it meaningless to talk about this now?" I was so angry that my face turned red. "Meaningless? Look at this report sheet yourself. What exactly is your good son suffering from? This is called marriage fraud. We don't even know if Jayla has been infected by my younger brother yet." My father said sternly, "What marriage fraud? If it weren't for your younger brother's problem, would I have let a divorced woman who had an abortion into the Maya family? Such a woman asked for a dowry of 1.88 million yuan, a house, and a car. If it weren't for your younger brother, I would have kicked her out long ago." My mother got worried when she heard what I said. "Will the baby in her belly be infected?" I looked at my mother in disbelief. "You're still only thinking about the baby in Jayla's belly?" My father stared at me coldly. "Of course. The century-old preserved plum recipe of the Maya family has always been passed down only to men. We urgently need a male heir now." 17 Dad, you know it's 2023 now, right? Don't you think it's ridiculous to say these things? Seeing that the atmosphere between us was already tense, my mother immediately tried to smooth things over. "Maya, it's not that Mom and Dad are sexist, but this is a rule passed down from our ancestors. It can't be changed," I sneered. "What if Jayla isn't pregnant?" My mother's face changed drastically. "Impossible. Jayla showed me the B ultrasound sheet yesterday." "Maya, I know you're very smart and that you've put a lot of work into the factory, but if the baby in Jayla's belly is a boy, the factory will definitely go to your younger brother's son." Hearing this, I didn't want to argue with my parents anymore. If we continued this conversation, they would surely think that I was trying to compete with the son in Jayla's belly for the family property. "I'll bring the recording pen over tomorrow and let them listen to it, and the truth will naturally come out." To get back before Blake and Jayla got off work, I left work half an hour early, because the recording pen was still in Jayla's room. But when I parked my car in the underground garage, I found that Blake's A6L was already parked in the parking space. 18 I took out my phone and called a colleague in Jayla's office. "Xiaoyu, is Jayla in the office?" "President Maya, President Blake took Jayla out this afternoon and they haven't come back yet. Some people just can't get rid of their shabby nature. They're even too stingy to get a hotel room." After hanging up the phone, I walked towards home. As I walked, I maliciously thought to myself whether I would catch them in the act. As soon as I opened the door, a stinking smell hit me. Before I realized something was wrong, two large and fierce bully dogs with saliva dripping from their mouths had rushed towards me. They barked furiously at me first and then kept approaching me tentatively. They wanted to attack me. I stood still, not daring to move, for fear that any movement would cause me to be pounced on and torn apart. After all, these two dogs looked like they weighed at least 60 or 70 pounds each. The consequences of being pounced on would be unimaginable. I pressed myself against the wall, groping for the doorknob behind my back. The moment I grasped the doorknob, I threw my handbag at the dogs with all my might. Then I quickly opened the door, slipped out, and immediately closed the door behind me. After narrowly escaping death, I collapsed on the ground, panting heavily, and my back was already soaked with sweat. 19 After resting for a while, I went back to my car to call the police and also called the local urban management department. Bully dogs are large and fierce dogs and are not allowed to be kept in the city at all. Although I don't know how the two bully dogs got into my house, they must have something to do with Jayla and Blake. I really didn't expect these two to act so quickly. 5 or 6 urban management officers fully equipped finally managed to take the two bully dogs away. The police also went to the property management to check the surveillance footage and found that it was indeed Jayla who brought the two bully dogs back. Before the police could summon Jayla to inquire about the bully dogs, Jayla herself came to the police station to report a case first. "Hello, officer. I lost two bully dogs worth 100,000 yuan. The officer pointed at me and said, "This Ms. Maya said that two bully dogs suddenly appeared in her house and almost bit her. The urban management officers have already captured the dogs." Only then did Jayla look at me with a guilty expression as I was making a statement. "Sister, you weren't injured, were you? It's all my fault. I forgot to tell you. These are my younger brother's dogs. He said that dogs aren't allowed in the dormitory, so he left the dogs with me to take care of for a couple of days. I just went out to buy something and I didn't expect you to come back right at that time." I sat in my seat, looking calm. Yes, what a coincidence. Based on the existing evidence, the police determined that it was just an accident and therefore refused to file a case. Coming out of the police station, I looked at Jayla coldly. "Where was Blake at that time?" Jayla curved the corners of her mouth, her voice soft and moist. "Brother-in-law, he was accompanying me to the supermarket at that time. He said he would buy bird's nest for me." Sister, please don't misunderstand me and brother-in-law. When we went to the supermarket to buy bird's nest today, Mom and Dad went with us too. Seeing my face darken, Jayla couldn't conceal the joy in her eyes. "Also, brother-in-law didn't mean to not pick you up. There was a sudden visit from a dealer at the factory just now, and he's still singing with the dealer. What a perfect alibi. If I had been bitten to death at home today, it would probably have been regarded as just an accident too. And because of the get out of jail free card in Jayla's belly, my parents wouldn't delve too deeply into her responsibility either. What a clever plan. I really underestimated these two idiots before, but it's okay. This way, I won't feel guilty when I take tough measures later." 21 Blake didn't come back all night, and I had a good sleep. Compared to my radiant look, Jayla had obvious dark circles under her eyes. During breakfast, she looked angry, constantly typing on her WeChat with both hands. I glanced sideways and saw that she was chatting with Blake on WeChat. How ridiculous. She actually cared more about Blake's whereabouts than I, the legitimate wife. Taking advantage of Jayla going to the bathroom, I retrieved the recording pen from her room. After listening to the recording last time, I hid the recording pen in her room again to obtain more information. By the time I finished all this, Jayla was still in the bathroom. I asked, "Jayla, are you okay?" The sound of flushing came from the bathroom. "Sister, you go to work first. I'm going to the big." No. I'm having a bit of stomach discomfort. I'll go to the hospital for a checkup later." I immediately guessed that Jayla must have gotten her period and was afraid of being exposed, so she didn't dare to go to the factory. It seems that the KPI for this month still hasn't been achieved. "Jayla, I'll take you to the hospital. You're pregnant. I'm worried about you going alone." Jayla's voice immediately panicked. Sister, really no need. Today our biggest client will visit the factory. You definitely need to be there. Don't worry. I've already sent a message to my brother to come and accompany me to the hospital. I pretended to be concerned and said, okay then. Remember to call me if anything happens. 22 At the factory, I couldn't find a chance to talk to my parents about the recording pen. Because they had been entertaining the big clients of the factory all the time, and Blake had been accompanying them. It wasn't until evening, after I sent the clients back to the hotel, that I got the chance. I in the office, my parents were still discussing the matter of the big clients of the factory. We must firmly hold on to this big client, Eupenhut. Most of the orders in the factory now are from Eupenhut. I took out the recording pen from my bag and placed it on their table. Mom and Dad, you can listen to the recording in here and you'll know that Jayla isn't pregnant at all. They also want to kill me. Hearing this, my parents finally realized the seriousness of the matter and their expressions immediately changed, but just as they were about to open the recording, a sharp and urgent ringing came. It was my father's cell phone ringing. He picked up the phone and exchanged greetings with the person on the other end for a while, then my father just kept saying oh, being rather vague. After hanging up the phone, my father gave my mother a meaningful look and then put the recording pen into his bag. Maya, an old classmate of Dad's, has arrived at the door. There's something very important to talk about. After listening to the recording, Dad will contact you as soon as possible. Before I could say anything, Dad had already left with Mom, carrying his bag. I don't understand. What could be more important than their daughter's life? Fortunately, since I was a child, I've already been used to the feeling of being ignored. 23 The next day, I came to my parents' office early to wait. I wanted to discuss with them about calling the police to arrest Blake and Jayla. Before, I didn't call the police because they hadn't actually done anything to harm me physically, just based on the recording alone, it might not be enough to convict them. But the incident of the bully dogs yesterday would surely leave evidence, so the police would have a direction for investigation, but by 10 o'clock in the morning, my parents hadn't come to the factory. I called them many times, but it all showed that their phones were turned off. I felt an inexplicable panic and quickly drove to their villa. Fortunately, everything was normal in the villa, except that a few of my parents' daily clothes were missing from the cloakroom. I then went to the storage room and found that both of my parents' suitcases were gone. Could it be that my parents went on a business trip? I called my father's assistant, Xiaopeng. Did my parents ask you to book plane tickets? Jiao, last night the chairman asked me to book 3 plane tickets flying to Thailand today. I quickly asked, besides my parents, who else's? Jayla's too. The chairman said he would take Jayla to Thailand to take care of her pregnancy. Take care of her pregnancy? How could that be? As long as they listened to the recording, they would know that there was definitely no baby in Jayla's belly. Moreover, my parents are cautious people. After I reminded them several times, they would surely confirm whether Jayla was really pregnant or not. A ringtone interrupted my thoughts. It was my father calling. I immediately picked up. Maya, leave the factory to you to manage during this period. Your mother and I will be on a business trip for a while. Don't ask any more questions. We'll be back in about 2 months. After waiting anxiously all morning, I got these 2 rather abrupt sentences. I was so angry that I directly interrupted my father's words. Did you listen to the recording at all? You clearly know that Jayla wants to kill me. Why are you still taking Jayla with you? If you don't care about my life or death, then give me the recording pen and I'll call the police myself. My father hesitated for a while. Maya, forget about the recording pen thing. For a moment, I thought I was having auditory hallucinations. I still didn't give up. Dad, where is the recording pen? Beep beep beep. Looking at the hung-up phone, I suppressed the angry expression on my face and slowly showed a smile. This game that has been going on for 20 years is finally about to reach its climax. Now all that's left is a pawn like Blake to make the last move for me. 25 In the evening, I cooked a whole table of dishes for Blake and also prepared a bottle of mutai. When Blake got home, he looked flattered. Blake, do you remember that today is our wedding anniversary? Blake sat at the table, and a hint of stiffness flashed across his hypocritical face. Yes, of course I remember. After 3 rounds of drinking, the bottle of white wine was almost empty, and almost the whole plate of cold wood ear mushrooms had gone into Blake's stomach. Looking at the empty plate, I smiled at Blake. Blake, I see you like this wood ear mushrooms very much. I'll often cook them for you in the future. Blake drunkenly held my hand. Maya, do I still have a chance? I know I'm not worthy of you. As long as you're willing to accompany me tonight and become my woman, I'll be good to you from now on. I looked at Blake with a tender expression. Give me some more time. I'm already trying to accept you. 2 months later, I'll give you a definite answer. But during these 2 months, don't do anything to force me, okay? You know my temper. Blake stared at me with wide eyes, as if he never expected me to answer like this. Really? Maya, that's great. I knew that even a stone should have been warmed up by me in these 4 years. 26 In the middle of the night, Blake started vomiting and having diarrhea. I wanted to take him to the hospital, but he was having diarrhea so frequently that he couldn't go to the hospital. After a torturous night, Blake finally got a little better at dawn. I took out an infrared thermometer to measure Blake's temperature. He still had a fever. After 3 days of intravenous drips in the hospital, Blake slowly recovered. From then on, it was as if Blake had opened Pandora's box. He started having frequent diarrhea, fever, and rashes on his body. In just 2 months, Blake lost 20 pounds. I took him to the hospital and asked the doctor to give him a comprehensive examination. After listening to all of Blake's symptoms during these 2 months, the doctor gave Blake and me a meaningful look and then prescribed an HIV test. When the report came out, Blake was in the toilet having diarrhea again. I helped him get the report. HIV positive. When Blake got the report sheet, his face turned pale in an instant. He walked into the doctor's office in a state of panic. The doctor glanced at the report sheet. You need to be transferred to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for treatment. It is also recommended that your family members get a checkup too. With that, the doctor called the next patient. 27 On the way home, neither Blake nor I said a word to Blake. Medicine is so advanced nowadays. It can definitely be cured. Let's go back now to pack our things. I'll take you to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to be hospitalized. Blake looked out of the window with a gloomy face and didn't say anything. As soon as we got home, Blake went straight to the guest room and then frantically rummaged through Jayla's things. Finally, he found my younger brother's HIV report sheet in the lining of Jayla's suitcase. Bitch! You bitch! Blake couldn't help but roar. His sallow face was flushed with anger, his lips were pale, and his whole body was trembling. Where the hell is Jayla? I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Jayla came back to the country with my parents today. She should already be at my parents' house by now. Blake grabbed the car keys and rushed out. Seeing this, I followed him too. 28 By the time we arrived, my parents and Jayla were sitting at the dining table having dinner. Seeing us come in, Jayla's big, watery eyes immediately filled with tears as she looked at Blake, as if she was telling him countless grievances. But Blake didn't hesitate at all. He quickly rushed towards her and pulled out a knife from his pocket, forcefully pressing it against Jayla's neck. Soon, a faint blood mark appeared on Jayla's neck. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. My father immediately reacted. Blake, let's talk things over calmly. My mother first looked at Jayla's stomach and then at Blake. Blake, put the knife down first. Jayla was almost scared to death by Blake's actions. She subconsciously covered her stomach. Brother-in-law. With a slap, Blake slapped Jayla hard across the face. He grabbed Jayla's hair and dragged her up from the chair. Bitch! Why did you harm me? Jayla cried and said, Brother-in-law. What are you talking about? What do you mean by harming you? Blake took out a stack of report sheets from his bag and threw them at Jayla's face. Damn it! Max has AIDS. Did you know you were infected and deliberately approached me? 29 This one sentence stunned everyone present. Jayla was the first to react. I can't have an infectious disease. I had countless tests before artificial insemination, and they were all normal. I stared at Jayla and asked, artificial insemination? Whose? My younger brother is already dead. She stared at my parents viciously. It's theirs. During this period, they not only confined my freedom and didn't allow me to communicate with the outside world. They also threatened me to go to Thailand to have artificial insemination with their sperm and eggs. I turned to look at my parents in disbelief. Are you too crazy just to have a son? Everything you've done is illegal. My father snorted coldly. Illegal? I provided her with good food and accommodation and promised her that as long as she gave birth to the child, I'd give her 1 million in cash. It's a done deal. We clearly signed a contract. I already transferred the money to her parents. And now she's turning the tables on us. Jayla shouted hoarsely. That's because you threatened me with the recording pen. If I didn't agree, you'd send me to jail. Brother-in-law, they know. They all know that we wanted to kill Maya. That's why they threatened me with the recording pen to have a baby for them. 30 Faced with all this, Blake didn't know what to do. Jayla pointed at the mobile phone on the table and said, Brother-in-law, I took a lot of recent test sheets with my phone. You can have a look to see if I really have an infectious disease. Blake picked up the mobile phone on the table and carefully checked it. It's impossible. I've only had relations with you during this period. Jayla's voice with a tinge of crying came again. Could it be that the hospital made a mistake? Impossible? Blake murmured. The hospital can't make mistakes. That day, the report. Suddenly, Blake remembered something as if he'd been electrocuted. He slowly turned to look at me, his eyes like those of a venomous snake. Maya. So it was you? I folded my arms across my chest and nodded with a smile. Blake, are you happy? You don't actually have an infectious disease. But don't be too happy either, because you're going to jail soon. To be precise, everyone here is going to jail. 31 As soon as the words were spoken, several policemen rushed in. My father lowered his voice and said to me, Maya, why did you call the police? There's still the child of me and your mother in Jayla's belly. I won't hand over the recording pen. I must protect Jayla, otherwise she'll definitely incriminate me and your mother. Don't blame me, daughter. I did all this for the inheritance of the Maya family's preserved plums. I looked at him as if he were a fool. Dad, oh no. It should be uncle, right? The recording pen I gave you is just a copy. The original has been lying in my drawer all this time. Didn't you hear what I just said? All of you are going to jail. Including you and Auntie. Uncle, confining others' freedom, threatening and intimidating, and trafficking in persons are all illegal. Cassius looked at me with a puzzled expression. Maya, I raised you with great hardship. Why? 32 Why? 40 years ago. My uncle Cassius was determined to marry his current wife, but the entire Maya family opposed it. He eloped with his wife, leaving a resolute letter stating that he would have nothing to do with the Maya family from then on. The Maya family then elected my mother as the new heir. To prevent the Maya family's preserved plum recipe from spreading out, the Maya family forced my mother to never marry in her life. My mother dedicated all her efforts to the Maya family's preserved plums, and the Maya family's preserved plum business grew under her management. At that time, Cassius came back with the wife he eloped with. Cassius used all kinds of schemes to snatch the Maya family's preserved plums from my mother. To make my mother give up her longing for the Maya family's preserved plums, he found a husband for her, a dying invalid. That's right, it was my father. Not long after, they had me. However, my father's health only lasted for 3 years and he passed away. My mother also died of depression. Whether out of guilt or because of public opinion, when I was 5 years old, I was taken to Cassius's house. Cassius stroked my hair. Little Maya, I'll treat you like my own daughter. From now on, you can call me Dad. If I hadn't accidentally found my mother's diary, I would still be grateful to Cassius. 33 To be able to stay in the Maya family's preserved plum business, I married Blake, a Phoenix man, right after graduating, but I made it clear to Blake that there was only an employment relationship between us. Cassius, to maintain his image of a loving father, indeed let both Blake and I enter the Maya family's preserved plum business. However, the house I lived in and the car I drove were all under Cassius's name. He treated me like his own daughter on the surface, but in fact, he had been on guard against me all the time, and I had been lying in wait for years just for this day to deliver a fatal blow. The few years that Cassius would spend in prison would be enough for me to take control of the Maya family's preserved plums. 34 On the day the judgment was announced, I went to visit Cassius in prison. Cassius, wearing a prison uniform, looked a dozen years older. Maya, was it all planned by you? After your younger brother died, you first let the illegal surrogacy agency approach us, constantly brainwashing us that we could go abroad for surrogacy. Then you handed Jayla's weakness into our hands, making us threaten her with the recording pen. Blake was also a move you arranged. You made him think he had an infectious disease and come to seek revenge on Jayla. Jayla, to protect herself, would surely tell the truth. When we flew to Thailand, you knew your plan had succeeded. Maya, you're such a good actress. I looked at Cassius with amusement. Uncle, what are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Everything needs evidence. Cassius looked at me with a sinister expression. Don't get too cocky. Even if I'm in prison, the Maya family's preserved plums are still mine. The recipe and the channels of the Maya family's preserved plums are all in my hands. I twirled the bracelet on my wrist. Uncle, I could recite the recipe backwards when I was 3 years old. Your so-called channels are just Jupenhut, right? President Oliver, who came last time, isn't just my old classmate. When I went to Europe for a month of travel a few years ago, I was actually taking care of his mother in the hospital. I did everything from serving tea and water to helping her with her toilet needs. All to win his resources. He's my trump card to bring you down. Also, I've already re-registered the century-old Maya family brand and will take over everything related to the Maya family's preserved plums. I hope when you get out, the empty shell of the Maya family's preserved plums won't disappoint you. Walking on the way home, I looked up at the sky and slowly let out a breath. Mom and Dad, may your spirits in heaven be comforted. 35 Ding-ling-ling. I picked up the phone. President Oliver, a clear, mellow voice came from the phone. Maya, are things all taken care of? Yes, almost. Then Cassius, can you give me a chance? The gentle breeze ruffled my hair as I slowly said. Oliver, Maya, will never be trapped by love in this lifetime. There are still many meaningful things waiting for me.